Okay, without further ado, let's move on to our overview. So we will start briefly by going through the background of this setting and then introducing the collaboration virtual reality environment for you, and then moving on to the scenarios and user studies we did. And after that, we'll go through the outcomes and conclusions. Our motivation for this presentation is, of course, like the name says, to promote the academia-industry collaboration and share our practices of long-term collaboration history, and then demonstrate the benefits of collaboration for both academia and industry. KONE is a global leader in elevator and escalator industry, but in this presentation, we are kind of focusing mostly on the elevator maintenance side.
Tampere University is one of the most multidisciplinary universities in Finland. You know, Finland is not a big country, but we are quite big university for such a small country. We have more than 20,000 degree students and more than 4,000 academic staff. So I'm presenting myself. I'm a professor of interactive technology, which roughly means that I deal with all kind of user interfaces which are imaginable. I have 25 plus years of experience from this field, including extended reality. Actually, I did my master thesis back in 90s about the subject. And I have been studying all kind of novel user interfaces. I'm interested in interaction analysis, which is one of the key points of extended reality, all kind of user experience and interactive software architectures. My background is in computer science.
Yeah, thank you, Markku. My name is Viveka Opas. I'm virtual reality specialist. I work in learner experience team in KONE Global Learning and Development. I have over 5 years of experience in extended reality in training and industrial use. I have master's degree in game studies, and most of my expertise is in virtual reality training, technical training, learner experience, gamification, and then in human technology interaction supporting learning and industrial work. Then, now that the basics are done, let's move on to introducing the platform we created. So we call it GoVR for industrial collaboration. And why we wanted to create this kind of platform is because we wanted to have some kind of answers to these 5 practical challenges that we've been facing in our daily work. The first challenge is how to enhance the innovation capability of people with no access to physical equipment. And physical equipment here means either the elevator or escalator, or even the VR sets that we have in over 20 countries where we have KONE operating. Then the second challenge is kind of to how to start innovating upon the prototype yet not existing. And third and fourth are kind of a little bit relating. So how to better involve people from different time zones into the innovation process, and at the same time how to get a more multidisciplinary innovation process, so meaning people from different departments involved. And the final one was to how to broaden the innovation in VR beyond those who have access to VR gear. So this is what we've done. In the beginning, we identified certain scenarios where VR would be useful in the maintenance method documentation creation process. And from that process outline, we picked these scenarios and then did some user tests. In this graph here, you can see the process outline of the documentation creation. And in the future slides, you will see from which parts of this process we had the VR scenarios. And our aim was to kind of support the already existing process with help of virtual reality. The main challenges were that the people involved in the process, they have limited access to the physical devices, meaning the elevators. So there are people creating the documentation without never seeing the product itself. And of course, this is something that we can solve with virtual reality. And this is how we wanted also kind of to avoid possible design errors in the process. And I assume many of you are familiar with kind of having barriers in the communication when there are globally distributed teams working together.
So, in technical sense, what we developed was what you can say just another virtual reality system. Why to develop just yet another virtual reality system? Because of the things that Viveka just explained. We are dealing in very complex industrial setting. We are dealing with processes, not only some specific situation like fixing a machine, but we had to manage all the processes and all the complexity with geographically distributed teams, etc. And for that specific reason, we took the best parts from we learned. We have been dealing with a lot of technology and different systems, and we created for the specific support or the specific need a set of environments which cater for different settings like synchronous, asynchronous collaboration, and then we developed a set of tools. Some of those are very familiar for many of you because they are existing ones in other systems. But here we just focused on putting something that really supports the practical work of KONE people. Here are some examples from different usage scenarios where you can see how these tools are taking place. No details here, you can read a big bunch of papers on that.
Yeah, and like you can see, these are not any kind of high fidelity pictures, but we can have the benefit even without having the kind of crisp high-end solution. Yeah, now let's move on to the scenarios that we already briefly mentioned. So, in the scenario 1, we did asynchronous collaboration among maintenance method developers and technical writers. So, asynchronous meaning that there were only one people at a time inside virtual reality inspecting the certain object that's visible also in the picture, and then we left notes. And the next person was then again able to see the notes of the previous person and comment on that.
And for us as a developers of the system, this was the first time we realized how important it is to really support asynchronous communication and collaboration. And we started to create tools specific for that. For example, efficient text entry is crucial when you have asynchronous collaboration taking place. It's much more than, for example, in synchronous communication. And of course, we had to create some novel test methodology, but we are not going to talk about the details of the user studies. All of them have their own dedicated research articles, which showcases what we did.
In scenario 2, we did remote user study. Also, the same parties involved, so the technical documentation and maintenance method development.
Here, I think the key point for us as researchers were to think of how we can support asymmetric collaboration with virtual reality. And now I'm very convinced that there's no way that we all are going to have the same kind of setup, all have a high fidelity, immersive, head-mounted displays. Instead, we had to support asymmetric way of approaching virtual reality, the low end being teens like we used here, and then you can have at the high end. But they must work together, and you must make the tools so that people are able to collaborate, whatever kind of devices they do have for virtual reality, because it became very obvious that even with such a high-level tech company like KONE, their users, real users, need asymmetric tools for collaboration.
Yeah, the scenario 3 was then synchronous collaboration of the documentation review process. Here we also included the risk management team, so this was eventually even more multidisciplinary than we originally planned.
And again, from the research point of view, I just showcased how important asynchronous communication is, but at the same time, we had to cater for synchronous communication where the different partners have very varied backgrounds, very varied knowledge, and still they must use the same environment and same tools to achieve their different goals.
In the original workshop, we also identified learning as a one point where VR should be used, but as we have already been using VR for training in over 5 years at KONE, we did this study emphasizing the remote learning with asymmetric VR. And this we did together with a Finnish digital training company called UpKnowledge, who is our partner with our usual technical virtual reality trainings.
And for a researcher like me who is interested in how humans learn, how they behave in virtual environments, this provides endless possibilities to learn about our behavior, and we can build better systems. At the same time, we need tools for that kind of research, and again, we cannot go for the details, but one real outcome was the set of tools which can be used when you set up this kind of systems. Also, working with yet another company, you had to take into account that you have different technology. You had to put them together, and we managed to solve these issues so that the working system was consisting of a lot of technological components, not by any single system.
Yeah. This brings us to our outcomes, which are actually a bunch of different guidelines and then some framework. We are not going to go in detail through all of these guidelines. You can see from the underneath of the slide that there's a reference to a paper, and in the upcoming slides there are two.
Of course, these are rather high level and might look quite obvious in some cases, but I really recommend you to take a look at the articles we have developed, because there you can see some real-world examples from KONE's operations, how they fit into the overall process, what they are doing.
Yeah, so these were the guidelines for virtual tools design. Here we have guidelines for asymmetric use of VR.
And like said, I really believe that this is in many ways the future of how we are going to use virtual reality in real-world applications. Of course, in toy applications, you can use any kind of a setup of your dreams, but this is how it will be used for next years really heavily in industry.
Yeah. If you are only going to take a look into one set of guidelines, check this out, because having successful asymmetric session is, in my opinion at least, bit harder than using the VR in a traditional way. Then here we have guidelines also for using asymmetric VR in a training.
And maybe it's good to say at this point that all of these take place during the pandemic, and it was amazing to see things happening even. For example, we at the university couldn't do anything because of our restrictions, but the way we made these together with KONE in their different premises enabled actually findings that were probably never done without the pandemic, because we had to think out of the box really heavily.
Yeah, definitely. The pandemic sped up the development of these things. Then, here we have the framework for academia-industry collaboration, which is, I think, the most important outcome of our collaboration. So, I know the graph here looks kind of busy, so we are not going to go that through in too much detail, but it's meant to be kind of generalizable process-oriented framework to do similar kind of collaboration that we have done. In the graph you can see that it's really iterative development and following the user-centered design principles.
And maybe one from the key messages is that if you do collaboration with academic people like us, I think you had to explain and you had to make the academics and the people who develop systems for you the ways you work, because there are thousands of bottlenecks in this kind of complex environments. And I have been collaborating during the last 30 so years with hundreds and hundreds of companies, but never before we have had our hands really down into the practices, and actually we learned together quite much about how those practices, we are not talking about a bunch of people, but different teams distributed in different places in the world, and how they collaborate was, you had to figure that out. You had to find where we can put the different components to make something meaningful, because any a bottleneck will make unusable overall system.
Yeah. Then let's move on to the conclusions. Let's start briefly going to the benefits of the collaborative virtual reality, what we did here. So with that, we can include diverse teams to the innovation process. You may be noticing that some of these benefits are answering to the 5 practical challenges that I listed in the beginning. We can also improve the innovation capability and collaboration of remote distributed teams. And by including collaborative VR as part of the early phase of product development process, we can improve design for maintainability and design for installability. We can also enhance innovation capacity of people with no access to a physical device. Collaborative VR can act towards achieving sustainability goals in several dimensions, for example, by lessening the need for travel. And collaborative virtual reality enhances the communication compared to traditional means of communication by, for example, making it easier to each other understand.
So, the overall conclusions are that collaboration in complex, and I really emphasize complex industrial settings, can be enhanced definitely with proper virtual reality tools. But like I said, they need to be specific for that case, and they must support the processes that the company really follows. They are not going to adapt to ways of the tool. The tool must adapt to their processes. And the key features that we are now very confident in the real-world applications with asynchronous and asymmetric use of virtual reality. If you are planning a study where everybody has, the most advanced devices, and you are really putting these into the real-world apps, I bet it's not going to survive. So please include those into your tools. So, of course, this was some really great experience for us as well to see what are the benefits of doing this kind of collaboration. From our viewpoint as an academic person, it definitely increased the relevance of research and opens new research directions, definitely. And it has also gave us a great opportunity to gain a clear understanding of the gaps and challenges in the industrial context. Like I said, this was the first time we really saw how the company work in their daily internal processes, and we managed to build then support for those kind of processes. Usually in a high level, steering committee meetings, etc., with PowerPoint presentations, you don't see this kind of reality. And if you design a system for that, you don't know where you are designing the system in the end. And then access to the actual users. I bet most of the systems at the moment are done so that they have not been used in field. Here we managed to get not only opinions but data, all kind of data from the usage by real persons in the field. In the field here means a lot of things because of the situation, but that's the kind of most important thing. And then we can get this data, we can train better systems, of course.
Thank you, Markku. I've heard word budget here today several times already. So when going to the industry perspective, thinking about the benefits of the collaboration is kind of the knowledge, expertise, and additional resources available for experimental studies. So might be sounding a bit harsh, but it's the truth. And collaboration with academia can also help the company to better understand the company's own user needs and requirements that you maybe you don't stop to think about in the daily work. The collaboration also provides possibilities for doing research and experiment in companies that you wouldn't otherwise get the budget. And it also allows the industry to publish and share the knowledge with others.
So, if you like, there's a bunch of papers, but I bet you are not mostly interested in them. But please
here's the second page. Also.
Yeah, please let us know if you are interested in something specific. Contact me or Viveka, and we will provide you maybe nice PowerPoints instead of those research articles. Of course, you are welcome to read them as well if you really, really like to do so. But we are happy to share our experiences, and already these things have been applied for other domains. But maybe we are running out of time to explain the further exposures. Thank you on my behalf.
Yeah, thank you.
Any question from the stage? I have one, if I can. You spoke about your successes during this experience together. I'm curious about the biggest failures you had, because I think it was a very interesting learning journey, and as for every journey of this kind, there are always great lessons, but also something that didn't go in the way it was expected.
So,
this is a hard question because we started this collaboration before the pandemic. So I think the pandemic was our biggest challenge, and it even made us work closer. What do you think?
yes, definitely so, because we were witnessing that a lot of research and development efforts were lost during that time. People just waited. Maybe it goes away and we had to do something. But the biggest achievements actually came from the fact that we had to find another way to do things, and those things like the asynchronous communication and asymmetric communication actually were more useful than what we would have done without the pandemic. So I think we don't need another pandemic, but it was our biggest fear in the beginning, but then helped us to do things. Yeah.
Thank you. Additional questions?
Thank you, and good to see the collaboration between industry and academia. I have a question related to how was the experiences from the operational personnel related to the use of VR? Could you share some of those?
That's for Vivek.
Yes. Some of the people involved here had already used VR before, and some of them didn't. So many had tried some of our VR trainings. Well, in some of the user tests, there were, of course, learning curve before people learn to use the hand controllers and so on. But we also did kind of iterative development for the tutorial we had for this, and also changed some of the tools, how we use them. So.
Yeah, and I can add that we of course evaluated the user experience, including the expectations and experiences after the before and after the use. And I can say that we have been using the same methodology for a lot of different virtual reality tools and for a lot of other interactive software during the last 20 years or so. And now we don't have those nice figures, but they can be found from the papers, and they show that these people were really, really enthusiastic after they have used the tools. I can say that they are almost like in the highest level, and when you take any other systems we have been developing as well, they are better. So something really went well in this case.
Great. Thanks again for sharing your experience.
Thank you.